The Rockpile Report.
Buffalo, New York is going to be the epicenter of every stargazing nerd's wet dream.
With Buffalo Bills season ticket holder, Drew Geter.
If there was ever a time to break out Skyline Chili, it's when the Bills are 5-2, right?
The Rockpile Report. The pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
To another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. It's the best note to start a show like this on. Guys,
see if Chris leaves that in.
The audio will be cut out of it.
I am your host, Bill Season Ticket Holder Drew Geer. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. Riding shotgun tonight for our wild card preview, Mr. Ryan Lasel from Rock Sports Network and hashtag Sports Fame. And this is our wild card preview, the Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. First
you know
of all,
how pumped I am for this.
Let's all raise a glass,
big
guys.
Cocktail. This is my first playoff game. I have yet to go to a playoff game because
unemployment suits you.
Yeah, the place that I was working at, I had to work weekends, and then you also have to make time for the following season.
You were there at the perfect game against New England.
Oh, that's right.
It was a night game.
You know why? Because I came straight from work and
literally
Jessica
got dropped off. She literally,
I remember she dropped him off at the stadium when we were getting ready to walk in.
Not even at the stadium. She dropped him off like on the road where there's like active roadblocks, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "Leave me, just leave me." Almost tucked and rolled out of the car and just ran into the stadium.
Well, Ryan's going to sit with us for the game, the wild card game. And the last time you sat with us, there was a perfect game. So,
perfect game, and then the Steelers game last year. So, 2-0.
2-0.
Sit together. So.
Sitting with us in the rock pile.
Good juju.
Guys, here we go. Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard. It's always good to have
Thank God.
Thank God. Please.
Thank God.
I was like, don't you dare do this Sunday afternoon horse shit to me
I was
again.
worried they were going to do it because Denver's on the West Coast.
Well,
or at least 2 hours.
Burger, who tailgates across from us, tweeted at us, and I was like, it's either going to be 4:30 Saturday or we're getting Sunday at 1. Based on the way the games fell, I'm shocked that NBC didn't get Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and they got the second worst matchup.
They did it because they have to prop up the Prime sponsorship.
That I can see.
They're paying them back for all the dog shit games they had to sit through on Thursday Night Football. The place, obviously, Ralph Wilson Stadium, maybe one of the last wild card games we'll see in that building. Potentially the last wild card game to be played in Ralph Wilson Stadium. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's going to be a time.
The weather is going to be snowy, but not cold, right? Like 29, which really for this time of year isn't bad. 10 to 15 mile an hour winds, which means it'll be 20 to 25 over by the stadium because somehow, defying logic, the stadium exists inside of a vortex where wind just gets worse there. I know I say this over and over and over again. I live less than 5 miles from the stadium. It is not as windy at my house as it is out there at the stadium. Chris and I will be packing the truck up on a Sunday morning. Light breeze, nothing crazy. We get to the stadium and it's so windy you don't want to put a tent up. It's not that far. What happened here? What's happening within this like Bermuda Triangle that the stadium exists in that the wind just it gets like a plus 10? They go, "Oh, you're here? All right, plus 10."
Yeah. Yeah, it should bode well, hopefully, for
not just a football game, but also for one hell of a tailgate. Chris, where can people find us?
4180 Abbott Road, dock slot in the back by the toilets where we belong. I'll have some old fashions brewed up for the tailgate. You said Iman's doing chicken wings.
Chicken wings and shakshuka. I'm doing a little Cuban sliders. Cuban sliders.
The last time, you might have done them at one point this season, but you did do the Cuban sliders last year for the Chiefs game. I remember.
Tampa Bay game.
It was the Chiefs game because Mario and Paul came. I remember Paul making a big deal out of your Cuban sliders. Paul,
that's right.
Sports.
Listen, I am pretty good at what I do. Here's what I love. The line on this game is Buffalo minus 8.5.
Second biggest spread of the day of the weekend.
I believe it's gone up.
So it opened, I believe it had opened at 8. It had opened at -8.
On the Yahoo Sports app, I've got Buffalo -9.
Yeah, it had opened at -8, I believe, and it was the largest spread of the weekend at the time. And since then,
Ravens 9.5.
They have bet Baltimore up to 9.5.
Do you guys know that I like Denver with the points?
Yeah, I mean it's a sneaky play, right?
Yeah,
not a sneaky play. The Bills are 2-3 over their last 5 against the spread. The Bills haven't been good all season long against the spread. They don't do well in that scenario. Now, early on in the season, they were blowing people out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, wait a minute. Oh, you get into a firefight with LA and you lose. You get into a firefight with Detroit.
LA's in a firefight with fire right now.
That is true. They're going to move the game.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, they're going to move the game. It's just interesting that at 8.5, and you're a team that's on a losing streak against the spread. I'm not going to lie. I'm thinking about taking Denver with the points. Also, I'm bad luck Schleprock. I am the mush. So if I bet them, then it's almost a guarantee that the Denver Broncos are going to lose and lose big.
Yeah, I mean Buffalo's 10-7 on the season against the spread, undefeated at home this year.
All right,
which comes into play, and I believe I'd have to double check. I believe they are 4-6 against the spread at home. So they don't play a lot of close games at home, but they haven't really played a good home schedule. They haven't played a tough home schedule.
Spread or not, the only thing I have to offer for this podcast from a football perspective for the Bills winning would be I do like me some Sean McDermott against a rookie quarterback.
That is fair. On the call, we have Romo and Nance. We're getting the A squad.
Yeah.
It's not surprising.
Not surprising. It's Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
We're the best thing that the wild card round has to offer from a quarterbacking perspective. You put Romo in that game because Romo knows how to talk glowingly about quarterbacks. And honestly, that young quarterback might be one of the best things the Broncos have going for him too.
And don't forget, they only have 2 games this weekend, CBS.
Yes.
And where are they going to send them? Houston?
Yeah.
You're going to send them to cover the streamer's delight. Houston, every year that Houston has made the playoffs, they've been the opening game of the weekend.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Because they got no fan base.
They don't.
Neither do the Chargers.
They lost their fan base when they came back to Houston.
It's just a mess. And then the whole Houston, that was one of my favorite things of the Houston doing the throwback to the Houston Oilers. Don't do that.
Well, the worst part The worst part is Tennessee does the throwbacks every time they play Houston.
Yeah.
They wear the throwbacks.
And, as they should.
It's petty.
It's petty as hell, and I'm not going to lie to you. I would look at it as Iman and I were talking about it on Sunday, Chris. This idea that he's watching people be Baltimore fans, where he's like, oh, yeah, all these people growing up Baltimore fans. And then he goes, I know. So then we get to talking about what it's like to lose a team and how teams move and then what your allegiance becomes. And I said I flat out would stop watching football. If Toronto had ended up with the Bills, done. If they had been like, hey, we're going to rebrand them as the Toronto Maple Leafs of football. But, oh, by the way, every once in a while, we'll do a throwback day where we dress like the Bills. It would have been like January 6th at the border. It would have been
Drew would wind up on the terrorist watch list.
Oh my God. There would have been a caravan of us getting pulled over at border control, entering Canada. They go, what do you have all this gas for? Never mind. That's none of your business.
Why is your car filled with manure, sir?
Sir, why do you have all of these jerry cans in your It's none of your business.
Yeah.
Well, you know that for me, Denver's throwbacks they wore against the Chiefs, that is top tier throwback jerseys.
It's Denver.
It's the snorting Bronco with the Sherbert jersey. Oh my God.
It's Denver's throwbacks and it's the Buccaneers creamsicle outfit. Those are the 2 best throwbacks in the NFL right now.
I don't agree with you on the Buccaneers thing. I thought those things
I thought
there was a clown show.
No, Ryan's correct as usual.
Give me a game where those 2 are wearing those throwback uniforms, like a game against each other, and just
When I think about that uniform, all I can see is the Sports Illustrated, like the VHS series that they would put out every year that the Bills went to the Super Bowl. And when I was watching that as a child, one of my favorite moments of, I think it was the 1990 or 1991 season, was just the Bills abusing the Buccaneers in those creamsicles. Bruce Smith just ragdolling tackles around and sacking. I think it was Vinny Testaverde was their quarterback, and it was a mess. And just that is the only thing in my head, whenever I see those uniforms, I just see Bruce Smith laughing while he's toppling tackles. Well, he's literally at one point stiff arming a running back to his knees while he's horse collaring the quarterback. And I go,
back when you could do that.
And I go, this is too easy. This is a clown show. These guys were an embarrassment. You know who's not a clown show, Chris? The officiating crew for this one. And I'm actually really thankful for the NFL. Bill Vinovich.
Yeah, ooh, Vinovich.
Yeah. Third fewest flags in the NFL this season. And he's a staple, right, of the postseason. He's done at least one playoff game every year for the last 5. Last year, he was the divisional round and Super Bowl referee.
Yeah, I mean, is Vinovich, is his crew the best in the game?
They
might be.
Do you want to know why?
Most consistent crew in the league.
Do you want to know why I think he is? I want to take you back to a Buffalo Bills story. Let me set the stage for you guys. The year is 2022. The Miami Dolphins have come to Buffalo to basically cement their control over the AFC East. It's a night game. It snowed a lot. And snowballs are being thrown. It quietly was like a story of the game, people throwing snowballs. And so in the middle of the game, late third quarter, the referee comes on. Bill Vinovich grabs the headset and comes over the loudspeaker and goes, if another snowball makes contact with a player on the sidelines or on the field, it's a 15-yard penalty for Buffalo. And you watched people go, all right, fuck, I don't want to do this. And I saw guys put snowballs down and be like, all right. Bill yelled at us.
Like an absentee father who finally snapped in.
I don't want to get the team in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the asshole who costs us this game. So everybody sat down. Dawson Knox was talking to Chris Long on the Greenlight podcast, which is also part of the Blue Wire Network, was talking about that. And he laughs and goes, apparently, about 5 minutes after he made that proclamation throughout the stadium that I will throw a flag if anyone throws another snowball. The side judge who's working the line comes over to McDermott, just kind of sidles over to him as the play's kind of working its way down the field and goes, hey, just so you know, Bill wants you to know he can't actually enforce that. He just needed to say something to get these people under control. And McDermott was pissed when he made the proclamation. And then when he heard it, he goes, Knox was talking to Chris Long about it. And he goes, yeah, it was actually he's like, McDermott laughed. And it's like game respects game.
Yeah.
He goes, look, I just need to get these animals under control. We're trying to rein him in here. I'm not actually going to penalize you. Calm down, coach. Doesn't that qualify him as just a certified pro?
Yeah.
Best official in the NFL.
Yeah, I think, when you think of good officials, they're the guys that you recognize, but you don't know their names.
Yes.
Right? When Bills fans, if you're sitting at home listening to this going, I have no idea who Bill Vinovich is. When you see him pop up on TV, you'll be like, I know that guy. Right? That's the mark of a good official, in my opinion. Are the guys that you don't
want to be
Land
Clark.
Yeah. You don't want to be the guy where it's this fucking guy again.
Oh, right? You mean Land Clark, a millionaire with a 6-pack and just, I'd fight him. I'd fight him on principle. He'd be like, oh, I'm Land Clark. Be like, you're probably really cool and your family probably loves you. You're probably a great dad. I'm also going to throw this beer at you. Sorry. So with that said, injuries. Injuries are always a huge part of these games because now we're in single elimination season, right? Rasul Douglas, full participant. Amari Cooper, full participant.
Everyone was a full participant.
Everybody.
Except for
Brandon Codrington.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't love that, right?
Yep. And Jamarcus Ingram.
Now, Jamarcus Ingram, we can probably live without in this game.
Jamarcus Ingram probably winds up as inactive because everybody else is practicing.
Well, and also for reasons that we're about to talk about with tonight's guest, I don't know that we need to be that deep at DB.
Nope.
We probably need more guys in the D-line. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that the Ingram thing, and it's personal, right? Like, it's not an injury. He just had some stuff going on.
Yeah, he's got stuff going on.
So with that said, Codrington bothers me. Now, Mario from #Sports, your friend. He's our friend. I kid, Mario. Don't take it personally.
He's still upset about the ticket.
I know he is. Chris, I promised him your ticket, and then you ended up coming to that game. And I boxed him out. He literally texted me and was like, what do you want me to bring in the morning? How do you like your coffee? Whatever. And then I texted him. I go, I hate to tell you this. You're out. Chris wants his ticket back. Hit the bricks.
Which game was this?
Kick rocks, kid.
What game were you not going to go to and then your wife was okay? No, it was the game before
Patriots
that.
Game.
Oh, the Patriots game, yeah.
So what I don't love about this, the kick return injury, right?
Yeah.
Kick return, punt return. Who on the roster is qualified to take that job? Knowing Sean McDermott's preference to not have guys pulling double duty. Like, I can't have
Micah Hyde.
Oh, shit. Wow. All right. This is now I'm interested. Now I'm in.
Yeah.
Because before this, I was like, okay, they're going to put Ty Johnson there. And then that's going to hurt us because our third down running back has been Ty Johnson. Mm-hmm. And he's been exceptional at this.
Yeah, it'll be Johnson and Davis returning kicks, right? Like that isn't a big deal. They've done that before. They've let Codrington not return kicks. The punt return thing is interesting, right? Curtis Samuel has returned punts before. I mean, maybe they look for a way to get him involved somehow through that. Mac Hollins, I believe, has returned punts. We know, like, Cam Lewis can probably return punts. Ray Davis? I mean, maybe it's Ray Davis. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. That's what questions me. But then you think through and it's like, oh, they do have a guy at safety who doesn't really have to do anything else, and he has returned punts in the past, and he was the safety punt returner, right? Like the guy that went out there after somebody muffed a kick. Right, the rest of the game it was Hyde. So
that is true. Micah Hyde,
I don't know. He's there.
That.
He's there. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that's the solution. I'm just saying there's a guy on the roster that can do it.
And Chris, if you want to go ahead and give me the Denver injury report from today, the one thing I will say in lieu of this is that it would be cool to see Micah Hyde out there in a Bills uniform. If he goes out there in a playoff game and that ends up being the day he's carted off the field again, I don't know how.
If Micah Hyde dresses for this game, it might be the first time in a very long time where they actually announce the special teams unit coming out of the tunnel. Right? Usually it's offense, defense. It might actually be the special teams unit.
The Broncos injury report's very short. They look very healthy, right? There's nobody there of note. All the guys listed are backups. Most of them are limited. Ben Powers is the only starter who is limited, but I'm sure and it's just a rest day. Yeah, this is going to be two of the healthiest teams in the entire playoff field coming up against each other. So with that in mind.
Do you want to break down the fourth wall to get to our guest?
Sure.
Because this has to be done.
Sure.
As I told Ryan, it had to be done. So I'm going to go. I'm reading a text exchange between myself and Ryan Lasel as we get to bring in our guest here. Saturday morning, I sent Ryan a text message. I'm going to assume you have a team of people under you at work, correct? Hi, who is this?
I didn't have his number in my phone.
Chris Kruger? Ryan Lasel?
Question mark?
Yeah, because Drew did a group text with the three of us, I think the last time you were on. And I was like, oh, this is clearly Ryan Lasel. Save it in my phone. He goes, oh, hey, Chris, didn't have your number in my phone. I have multiple teams under me at work. Okay. The next time you're scheduling a meeting with your team, just tell them the day the meeting will be. Then day of, select the time. Then you get to see how I have to deal with Drew. And then I sent Ryan a screenshot of our text where you go, just confirm this guy as a guest for a preview. Okay, I'll firm up the time with him. So you don't have a guest. There's no time.
You have the concept of a guest.
You have the concept. You're gonna go, well, we didn't know who we were playing. It could have been three teams. But then you also set that up immediately because you have only a couple-day window because we didn't know the Broncos were our opponent until 7:30 Sunday night. So, I got this guy for a guest, but I don't know what time. So Ryan goes to my idea of emailing his team for a meeting and then day of give the time. That's psychotic. So that is what it's like working with Drew Gear when it comes to guests.
Drew would be if you were in that scenario, Drew, and your boss just sent you an email and said, "Hey, we're gonna have a meeting on Thursday," and that's it. That's all he said.
You act like that doesn't happen to me.
You would lose your mind if he didn't give you a time or a topic.
You're saying this like it doesn't happen to me. That people don't come and go, "Hey, can we have a meeting on this day to talk about a thing?" And I go, "Sure." And then I don't hear about it again. And then 5 minutes before the meeting, they go, "Oh, by the way, we're going to have a meeting right now." Everyone in the conference room.
That's where he gets it. It's learned behavior, Chris.
I like it.
Guys, here's what I know. I might be psychotic. So is everybody who's overlooking this matchup, right? Because it's single elimination football. I know I already said that, but it's easy to scoff at a 2 seed versus 7 seed. And Chris, the history of this isn't kind. You know, they expanded the playoff field back in 2020 with the new CBA. In the 4 years of the new playoff format, it's been brutal for these guys who have lucked in as the 7 seed. 0-2 the first year, 0-2 the second year, 0-2 this third year. But Miami only lost to Buffalo by 3. 1-1.
Skylar Thompson, a quarterback.
1-1 last year. Green Bay, that win over Dallas was one of the most resounding beatings of a home team in that round that anyone's ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, Dallas, now I will say the lone win, right? 1-7 all time are 7 seeds since the thing had been created, with the lone win coming against the biggest fraud in our nation's history since Firefest, the Dallas Cowboys. Do they ever stop being a flop in the first round?
Nope.
The only good thing is that the rest of their division got so good that they no longer just luck into a home game just to get embarrassed.
The only team worse in the first round over the last decade than the Cowboys is the Steelers.
So everyone just needs to remember that Miami with Skylar Thompson, right? A quarterback so bad that he only got 2 starts with the Miami Dolphins, even when Tua was out for multiple games, took Buffalo to the wire. That's the nature of playoff football. So it's easy to see that, see the seeding, see the spread, and think to yourself, this should be easy. It's all nonsense. All that's out here is air and opportunity between 2 really talented and actually very similar football teams. And with that, I'd really like to bring in tonight's guest because we have a lot to talk about those similarities. And so with that, we bring in tonight's guest, Mr. David Neill from David Talks Broncos. And David Talks Buffs. I don't want to detract from your thriving Colorado Buffaloes coverage, but David Talks Broncos is the reason I reached out to you, sir. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. You know, it's I started this channel this year, been doing the Buff stuff for a little bit longer than that, but man, what are the odds? I start this thing and we make the playoffs. I think we're off to
sounds like somebody
a pretty
credit.
good start.
I was going to say it's clearly you. You're a good luck charm for your good luck charm for the team. And I love the fact that that's kind of how you've been running a really successful Colorado Buffaloes channel. Trust me, Ryan, they've been compelling.
Yeah, they sure have.
They have been very compelling over the last couple of years here. And so then you start with the Broncos stuff, and you're just a long-suffering fan, just like us. And there's actually a lot of parallels, I feel like, as we kind of launch into what this wild card preview is.
They have 2 Super Bowls. We don't. I see how it compares.
They had a quarterback with horse teeth. We don't. No, really. So Denver's road to the 2024 wild card game, where we're going to meet them this weekend, is kind of billsy when you really get into it. Like I know the face you just made. You broke a playoff drought. We know all about that. We know what playoff droughts feel like.
Yes.
How taxing was it to almost go a decade without making it? Like the first couple years, it doesn't bother you. What happens after that?
Oh my gosh, it's just a pit of misery every single year. It's been kind of funny because over this year, I've really just found a lot of New York Jets YouTube channels that I now subscribe to because they're hilarious. But having the second longest playoff drought next to the New York Jets coming into this season, there was just a lot of the whole cycle throughout the season. I could relate to that of just
angst.
A new coach every 2 years. Surely this is the guy, right? Surely we got it right.
We can commiserate over this.
A rookie quarterback. What could go wrong?
A rookie quarterback. He's good. He's obviously
Case Keenum. He was good. We signed him in free agency. Let's see what. At least Tyrod Taylor brought y'all to the playoffs, right?
I mean, we've done the EJ Manuel thing. We've done the Ryan Fitzpatrick thing. We've been everywhere you guys have been, and we're also. Thing I like about you, David, you're also petty because following all those Jets shows, I do that too.
Yeah.
You guys came into 2024, and this is, I think, one of the craziest things. The Buffalo Bills did the thing I was pounding the table for all offseason. I said $20 million in dead money. No, those are rookie numbers. You got to pump those up. And we got to 50, I think 60.
It was
right?
60, yeah. Yep.
And I thought that was great until I looked at the chart and go, wait a minute, what do you mean we're not number one? The Broncos? The Broncos led the NFL with the most dead money in league history. You guys moved on from some significant talent and some significant contracts this year. I think our two teams are the only two even in that stratosphere, right?
Yeah. And I think it goes to show what good coaching, I'm not sure what the temperature right now is on Sean McDermott, but I will say, good coaching, I think good culture from an outsider looking in. That's what we've lacked for so many years until Sean Payton came in. And what do you need when you got a bunch of dead money? You need random 7th round draft picks, bargain free agent signings, trades where you're trading day 3 picks, those things to work out. And what do you know? I mean, we got a bunch of no names on this team. We got 1 first-round draft pick starting for us on defense. I think we got 2 first-round draft picks, including Bo Nix on the offense. And we're having our most successful offensive season since 2014. Get that. And, we're in the playoffs. We officially no longer suck. And it's all about the head coach, man. All about the head coach culture. $89 million in dead money for us this year. So that's a third of the salary cap. And
you need,
we won 10 games. It's remarkable.
That's it. And so to win 10 games with that kind of an inability to go out and buy talent in the offseason and really stock your roster, it has to be coaching that closes the gap between you and everybody else around you.
Yeah.
It's kind of where I was going to start this conversation was what's the Sean. I don't like Sean Payton. There's something about Sean Payton that I find just unlikable, and I don't even have a reason for it.
I had a problem with his sunglasses that he wore on Sunday. I had a big problem with that.
Our resident fashionista over here with his stupid gelled hair has a problem with the sun. Isn't it typical that he has a wardrobe issue?
Yeah, an issue with someone else's wardrobe.
Yeah,
right?
with someone else's
never
wardrobe.
Looks at himself in the mirror, but has plenty of problems with other people's wardrobe.
I mean, David, to give you an idea, my producer is the guy who wears Chelsea boots around his own home. Indoors. Unironically. He just wears them because he thinks he looks good walking around his house. He's wearing them right now. Oh, my God. I want to throw something at you. So with that in mind, I don't love Sean Payton, and I can't even put my finger on why.
What's the saying? I think I said this to you. I heard a podcast in the fall, it's fantasy, and they said Sean Payton is Dennis Allen with a ring. And I thought that was a scathing indictment for a guy who, by all accounts, has done pretty well with quarterbacks.
And is good at his job, as your 10 wins is evidenced by. So when you think about the pros and cons of him as your coach over the course of the season, because I've listened to some of your, I've watched your videos. Why don't you walk us through some of what you like and some of what concerns you about Sean Payton heading into this game?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think he can give quarterbacks such as Bo Nix a little too much. at certain points. Being a young quarterback, we've seen that throughout the year. There's also, like, of course, decision-making at the end. We're supposed to be an aggressive team. You preach aggressiveness. You embody confidence. You come out and say Nathaniel Hackett was the worst coaching job in NFL history out here in Denver. And you score a touchdown in Cincinnati. You got to win to make the playoffs. And you're wanting to play for the tie? That's what you're saying in the press conference? Thank God he came out and went for it a bunch against Kansas City, kind of righted that wrong. But there are some things with Sean Payton. I think he can get too cute. He can be too stubborn, as many of the great coaches are. But by no means am I not super thankful to have him as coach compared to where we went from, because usually it's like a pendulum swing, right? Nathaniel Hackett, this gentleman, would come in every morning to start training camp by giving all the players hugs as they would come out on the field.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it was no surprise to me that we were one of the most injured and just, least resilient teams in 2022. Sean Payton's made this team a lot tougher. He's completely revamped the culture with the ownership change as well when they hired him. So we're one of the most healthy teams in the NFL. We have one starter from the year that's out for this game. He tore his ACL in week 3 or 4. So we're a very healthy team. And I feel like we're a very tough and resilient team. We don't play perfect football. We run the ball horribly.
Well, this is something I want to get into and I'll tell you what, that's a good synopsis of the team and where you are right now emotionally. You're so much farther ahead of the game than where Hackett left you. And it's not shocking that he became the shortest tenured coach. Like Ryan,
we're familiar with Nate Hackett, right? Like Bills fans are familiar with Nate Hackett.
If the owners had decided that on like an away game, they were going to meet him at the airport and shoot him in the leg and make him find his own way home, I wouldn't have been mad about it. Like I would, like earlier this year, I think it was Stephen A. Smith was talking about Deshaun Watson, and he goes, "He's so bad that if someone said they wanted to arrest him for it, I would allow it." That's how bad Nate Hackett was at being a head coach.
Yeah.
And so when you think about how far you guys have come, there's still some things that I find interesting from a Bills fan perspective ahead of this game. You have this highly efficient and highly effective Bills offense. It's going to go up against the Broncos. The Broncos on offense have the third highest percentage of drives in the NFL that end in 3 and outs. 26% of the time the team goes 3 and out. And Ryan, I'll run you through some of the numbers over the last 3 out of the last 4 games. Cincy, they score a touchdown on Cincy, you guys go out, score a touchdown on the second drive of the game.
Yeah.
3 and out to start the game, and then 3 consecutive 3-play drives. Not great. Go up against the Raiders, score 6 second half points, and there's only 1 drive in the second half that burns more than 3 minutes of clock. Against the Chargers, open with house of fire, 3 straight touchdowns. I felt like an idiot for betting against him in that game. Get this giant lead. And then the last 5 out of the last 6 drives end in punts, and all of them were 6 plays or less. None of them had more than 3 minutes of clock, and the Chargers come back and win. And it's like, what's happening here? Mm-hmm. Can you speak to some of the inconsistency? I mean, is it this tinkering? Is it just the inability to commit to the run game? What is it here?
I think a lot of it is when you can't run the ball. I would imagine we're one of the worst teams in the NFL right now in rushing yards per game, and probably last when you factor Bo Nix out of the equation. So when you don't have that, you're going to get the results that you just mentioned, of just how you're either going to be on or you're not. You're not going to be able to sustain drives very well if you're not going to have a run game. So I think that has been the biggest issue right now with the offense. Throughout most of the year, Sean Payton has been trying to force Javonte Williams in a contract year to be a thing. His vision is terrible. He doesn't have the same burst that he had before that ACL injury. Yeah.
And that's a hard thing, right? When you're a player who was surviving before that just based on pure athleticism.
Yes.
You get exposed when that athleticism evaporates a little bit. It's why aging players, right? Like only the best to play running back make it to their late 20s, early 30s, because usually as soon as you lose a step, you don't have the elite vision. You don't have the elite contact balance. You don't have all the things that made you effective, and all of a sudden your production dries up. So,
well, and the other issue I think is it seemed as though Denver was like, we're good if Williams can't be who he was before his injury because we've got McLaughlin, right? And McLaughlin hasn't been what he showed he could potentially be last season, right? Like there were glimpses of him last year where, he was talked about as like being a league winner for fantasy football, right? Like the guys that grabbed Jaleel McLaughlin as soon as the injury came about, he was going to win you your league. And now this season, it's like, what happened? Like we expected this from Williams. Like maybe he wasn't going to be what he was, but we didn't expect this from McLaughlin, I don't think. I mean, and maybe you did as a Denver fan, but I certainly didn't.
Yeah, I think the guy that I was probably the most interested in or intrigued about coming into the season was Audric Estime.
Yeah.
I think we, like, even though we try to run more of that outside zone type of stuff with McLaughlin, I think when we've been most successful, it's kind of getting Audric Estime going, although it hasn't been very often, but running some more power when Sean Payton has been okay going away from trying to force Javonte Williams to be his own running back and running power, that's when he's been at least serviceable. So, McLaughlin has started to come along over like the last few weeks, which has been great. But I wouldn't mind kind of blowing out this running back room after this year, so to speak, except, keeping Audric Estime around. But none of these guys, I think the only guy that you probably need to be somewhat worried about to just break a big play is Jaleel McLaughlin. Like, he can make a guy miss, but by no means do we have anybody that I would call truly dynamic out there in the backfield to the likes of anything like James Cook.
Now, this is something, and Chris, if you can you send David the chart that you created? Here's what I'm looking at. I sent Chris some numbers. This is what I love about having a producer. He can do all my visual prep for me because I send him an Excel spreadsheet and he turns it into something that doesn't look like crap.
And then you tell me you don't like it.
And then I tell him I don't like it because like a typical diva behind a microphone. Nix isn't the only rookie on the roster. And I think that feeds into some of this too, right? Like when we talk about the inconsistency and what Bills fans are thinking about ahead of this game, you've got wide receivers Troy Franklin and Devin Vele, who are your third and fourth receivers, which speaks to by divesting of Jerry Jeudy, which is intentional. I'm not going to lie. I watched Jeudy play for his first couple years. I'm an Alabama fan. I expected Jeudy to be a stud. And when I watched the half-assed effort, it's not a shock to me that a coach like Sean Payton showed up and said, absolutely not. Get him the hell out of here. I don't care what we get for him. He needs to leave.
What's cool is that Mark Schlereth hates Jerry Jeudy as much as you hate Mark Schlereth.
Yes.
That's too funny. I'm not the biggest Mark Schlereth guy, but I loved him going after Jerry Jeudy on Twitter. That's all that guy did was go after people on Twitter during his tenure here. So
it was funny to me, though, watching how like Sean McDermott showed up here. When I talk about similarities in our franchises, good coaching, Sean McDermott showed up and immediately excused Sammy Watkins. He was like, you know what? You're a diva wide receiver who's not as good as you think you are. Get out of here. Go to some team that's going to feed you 90 targets. I don't care. You're not my problem. And Jeudy probably would have continued to be a detriment to this team. But it's addition by subtraction.
Yes.
And then you look at Audric Estime, Blake Watson, just like, okay, you've added some youth at running back, but that comes at the cost of like, okay, now there's a roster spot where maybe an established veteran might have been able to stem the tide on some of this Javonte Williams stuff. So it shouldn't be surprising that there's some growing pains because the wide receiver, you're going pass heavy with a young wide receiver core. There's going to be some problems, but then I look at Chris, and if you want to throw that up there for Ryan, I put together, because the last month of football, your target selection as the Denver Broncos has been really interesting to me.
Yes.
You take a look and you look at Marvin Mims, who I love. I love him. I got him in our dynasty league, and I couldn't be happier about it because he cost me next to nothing. Sutton is Sutton, right? He is a wide receiver one on a lot of teams in football. He is a very good, and if not, he's a really good number two, similar to what you get with T. Higgins. And like, you better have a Jamar Chase to not have Sutton as your number one.
Right.
But when you look at the way they disperse their targets between the top four wide receivers on your team, there's an obvious disconnect with the guys at the bottom of the depth chart. Everything, week 15, 16, 17, everything is funneling right now through Sutton and Mims. Velli and Franklin, it's not like they're not making plays. They're just also not getting a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that as a fan watching the lack of diversity and how they spread the ball around?
Over the last month, I don't really have as much issue with it because I feel like we've seen the offense, for the most part, I think put up enough points, to win. I think really the issue has been our overall really good defense hasn't been that good over the last month, aside from this past game. But I think coming into this year was figuring out what you got with all these young offensive weapons. I was very quickly writing off Marvin Mims to start the year. Sutton, there was a game in which he had 0 targets. So I just didn't know. I was like, well, maybe we just blow out the entire skill position room because literally wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs, because we don't really have anything. But let's try and figure out what we do have. I think Sean Payton's taken that approach because you saw us cut Josh Reynolds, halfway through the year. And it's been good seeing Marvin Mims finally take that step as kind of a late second round pick, a guy that I think has a nice role in this offense now. Sean Payton took him half the year, but he finally figured out a role. And I think he's also figured out how to finally call an offense for these guys. And that's going to take a while with so many young moving parts. Sure. Troy Franklin, he's the kind of one guy that I do wonder, next year, if he really has much of a role on this team, depending on how much of a jump, he takes. But he was kind of seen, as that project coming in, which is why he fell to the 4th round. Him and his chemistry with Bo Nix from Oregon, it just hasn't really translated for whatever reason. To underscore
that point for you, Marvin Mims was in the doghouse for the early part of the year.
Yes.
He wasn't seeing any run with the offense. His snap share was way down. Marvin Mims right now is probably the most explosive skill player. I don't think I'm on the line by saying that for the Denver Broncos. He has almost the exact same number of targets as Troy Franklin, but almost double the yardage. Yeah. He's just a better player. And I think it took Peyton a little while to figure that out.
Yeah. And he catches the ball.
It's Troy, job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's had some issues with drops. And I'll say this too. Little Jordan Humphrey, he is still featured in the offense. Again, outside of Adam Troutman, we don't really have anybody at the tight end position with a heartbeat. So he does come into play a lot as a big slot, maybe that you would see some tight ends play, helps in the run game. But he was being featured in the passing game. He was our second highest targeted player, I want to say, halfway through the season. But it took the drops. It took him fumbling the football, I think, 2 weeks in a row for Sean Payton to just go, you know what, screw it. Let's see what we got with these young guys. So then we at least know we'll probably have around $60 to $70 million in cap space, even with the Russell Wilson cap hit this offseason to spend. So this season, it's kind of like house money. Let's see what role these guys can fill, and we get a playoff game out of it too.
See, I'm just looking at this going, funneling all those targets to the same guys against the most opportunistic defense in the entire NFL, in the Buffalo Bills. That's where it's one of the keys to victory for me. We always talk about it at the end of the show, but it really is going to be a big deal. You kind of know going into this game where they're going to spread their targets. And so with that,
well, I think the other piece too is for the Bills defensively, you have always worried about the running games of the other teams, right? Maybe they're not being super successful as you face the Jets, right? Yeah, they haven't been super successful, but they still got Breece Hall, right? They still got that guy that could bust it. It's interesting how they come into this game against Denver. these running backs don't scare you, right?
No.
This running game,
you got to be worried about Bo. I think he's the biggest running threat.
Yeah, because and if any team is prepared to do it, it's the one that faces the guy in practice, day in, day out, week in, week out. That's a similar skill set to Bo Nix, right?
Yeah.
Like Bo Nix is Josh Allen light. If he was 20 pounds heavier, he'd have a very similar play style to Josh Allen.
And for our listeners who just want some context to the running back things that we're talking about, the usage and production for the team having a rookie quarterback, most teams skew the way of, I want to protect my rookie quarterback by leaning on the run. Justin Herbert, what you saw with him out there in LA when he started his career. Against Indianapolis, the Broncos had 18 carries and not a single running back had more than 25 yards. They spread all those carries out. They go against the Chargers, 17 carries, 48 yards was the high on the day for Audric Estime. Rookie, good performance. I'd say with the number of touches he had, that's a great day. Against the Bengals, 19 carries. McLaughlin looks good late as you guys are trying to just put that thing away and then stage a comeback after once you're coming back, he's getting, because now they know you're throwing. So there's some really wide open running lanes. He's a good one cut, get up the field running back. I don't know that he has a ton after the second level. So that's why you don't see him. Like, this is one of the things. None of their, one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL for explosive plays are the Broncos. That's the youth at wide receiver. That's the youth of the quarterback. That is the running back room. It is
having no tight end. Having no tight end. Yeah.
So the offense will put up a fight. You talk about the points they scored. Look at this. They're scoring 30-something points in 3 out of the last 4 games.
Yeah.
The problem is the inconsistency within that game opens the door for the other team.
Yes.
And if you run into, if turnovers rear their head, they become that much more damaging. Now, it's on your defense to kind of stem that tide. The defense is the one place where every Bills fan right now is sweating when they look at this team, because in the aggregate, to your earlier point, the defense as a whole is very highly rated. But down the stretch here, there's been some cracks in that. Why do you think that is?
Well, it all started when our great white cornerback, Riley Moss, went out. Number 21.
Yes, the great white hope.
Yes. Yeah. Him and Cooper DeJean from Iowa. Riley Moss was a 3rd-round pick for us last year. He didn't play at all. So we didn't really know what we were going to get out of him this year. I think him and Pat Surtain might be the best 1-2 combo at corner in the NFL. He's been fantastic. But when he went out, all of a sudden, Vance Joseph, we got some younger guys in the secondary, mainly Chris Abrams-Drain, who's a rookie from Mizzou. We had Levi Wallace on the team, but after he got
former Drought Bill.
See, there's always a through line through this entire podcast. Like, the Bills and the Broncos really aren't that different.
Yeah. So we bring Levi Wallace in. Bro gets absolutely torched by Jerry Jeudy for over 200 yards in his revenge game. And it's why, we almost got Jameised on Monday Night Football. And he started calling a lot more zone than man. I mean, you can probably talk about the complexities of the defense with some other guy. I'm not that guy.
Hey,
I know we run a lot of man coverage and we blitz a lot when everybody's healthy. But over the last month, when Riley Moss has been out, our zone coverage plays plays in zone coverage have been much higher, and we've gotten absolutely freaking torched. You're going to get burned in man coverage no matter what throughout the game, at certain points. But this is not a zone team, and this is not a team that, even though we got 2 guys in the league with double-digit sacks, we set the franchise record this year for most sacks in franchise history. We're not a team that gets pressure consistently, bringing 4.
And that's the problem. So I will say this, with the switch that you just talked about, because I've got all the numbers on it, when you look at the switch to zone, it's almost a blessing in disguise, because Josh Allen is actually, if you talk about EPA per play against man coverage, Josh Allen leads the NFL at 85.7 last year. And if you want to put that into context, the second and third place quarterbacks, like look at the guys who played in the Super Bowl last year. Patrick Mahomes, 31.4. Brock Purdy was 54.4. And Josh Allen's 30 points ahead of those guys. If you play man defense, look at this season. We played, Ryan, we played games against man coverage teams. The Dolphins wrecked them twice. The Jets, we eviscerated them in the last game. The Lions game might be one of the craziest things because he had 362 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. And then he ran for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. And therein, like that last stat right there, that underscores why he's so dangerous. When you turn your back to the quarterback to play man defense, Josh Allen goes, oh, okay, you're just going to give me that. And he takes 6 yards. And then he takes 9 yards. And then he takes 12. And if your guy slips and falls down, he might take another 12. And before you know it, they're on your doorstep again. In this way, it's almost a death sentence to go man-heavy pressure package against this Bills defense or against the Bills offense. And so in that way, the pivot that you guys have made almost seems well-timed for a game like this because even if they don't execute it well, it is hard to take a man coverage team and make them good at zone. The same way, like we talk about our rookie cornerback at the time, Kyer Elam, when we drafted him as a rookie. He came out of Florida. Everyone said, well, he comes from a man coverage scheme and it's kind of his strong suit. And they go, no, we can teach him zone. He's in his third year and he's lost out there.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that works against the Broncos is they're 6th in the league in terms of time in the pocket. And Josh Allen thrives if you give him time in the pocket. And that's to the point of they don't do well when they only rush 4. And if you let Josh Allen sit in the pocket, couldn't say this in previous seasons about Josh Allen.
No.
But this season, if you let him sit in the pocket with the receivers that he has, and you got 2 fantastic corners, one of them, I would say probably the best in the league in Surtain.
One of the best? What do you mean? Who's the other one?
Yeah,
Who's the other one? Go tell me.
It ain't Sauce Gardner, right?
Yeah, it's not Sauce Gardner. That's for damn sure.
Hey, he's been demoted to Ahmad Gardner. He doesn't get called Sauce anymore. He lost his nickname. That's how bad he's been.
But the great thing about having a guy, because we've had one, right? Trey White. Like the great thing about having a guy like Surtain is you can take away that number 1 option. Problem is when you line up against a team like Buffalo, who is that? Right? Like who do you put him on? Because they're fine with having Amari Cooper as a decoy, right? They've been fine with that over the last 4 or 5 games, right?
Well, David can probably speak to this. Watching that Cincinnati game, and you go, man, he is just shutting down Chase. And then on the other side of the field, T. Higgins is just running wild.
I know. He's just making insane all-pro highlight reel catches over Riley Moss, who, again, he's gotten the better of most of these wide receivers throughout the season. But, yeah, T. Higgins, he had his way. So, personally, how I feel about this, Broncos, we got nothing to lose. I think we've played our best football when we haven't overthought things. You might say it's to our advantage to play a little bit more zone. Maybe we do incorporate that. But I want this team just going freaking balls to the wall, baby. Let's bring 5 and see where we get with it.
Bring 5, bring 6.
I mean, it's the Aaron Glenn defense, right? Yeah, you're telling me I can't beat Josh Allen man-to-man. Watch me, right? Like, watch me do it. And
I would say this. Bring pressure and bring 6 and have one of them bring a baseball bat. I mean, whatever it takes. That needs to be the mentality. If you're trying to stop it, that needs to be the mentality. And I'm excited to see what the Bills' counterpunch to that's going to be. Because, we have some players. We've got a Khalil Shakir, paces the team with 100 targets. Mm-hmm. He understands where he needs to be in those sets of circumstances. And he has yet to have like a sexy game this year. And yet he leads the team in receiving yards. And then
the Bills just don't have that guy on their team, though. They don't have a guy who's going to go out and have a sexy game.
But the problem is for opponents, we don't need it because it's like in dodgeball, David, when the Globo Gym guys show up at the bar and they go, oh, your best player's dressed like a pirate. And they go, the joke's on you. We don't know who our best player is. We don't know who our best wide receiver is. We just have a bunch of guys. And every now and again, they happen to do like one of them has a really cool day.
That's kind of how I'd prefer it sometimes. I feel like Denver, Buffalo, we're the same, where we don't want those ego wide receivers.
No, you know what? Stephon Diggs was cool, and everyone thought we were going to miss that. And everybody was like, oh, like you think about all the star players that have come through Denver over the years. And it's like this team is accomplishing something that the last decade worth of players couldn't get done. Fuck those guys. We don't need them. We don't need them.
Yeah, exactly. Like Demaryius Thomas, Rod Smith, those are the guys who embody what a Denver Broncos wide receiver should be like. So right now, I've just loved that we haven't had anybody like Jerry Jeudy or freaking Melvin Gordon making the thing, making the game about themselves. And that's what I appreciate about Buffalo as well. They got rid of Stephon Diggs. It's maybe you guys see it more as a wide receiver by committee, but with your tight ends as well, it really does make it hard to defend in a sense of you don't know who exactly is going to be the featured guy from week to week.
Exactly. And it is hard to defend. So as we kind of round this conversation out, thing that you're most confident about for the Broncos, and then something that you're the least confident about. Either order, I don't care, because ending on a positive note is always better than not, right?
Yeah, most confident, we're going to throw the ball. Like, I don't really have much confidence in this team to run the ball successfully. Hopefully, I positively jinx us and watch us go run for 150 yards. That would be absolutely incredible.
Ryan, am I out of line in saying this? If they run for 150 yards, they probably win the game.
Yeah, I mean, as long as if it's Bo Nix that's doing the running, like the Bills are 7th in the league in terms of yards allowed in a scramble. They're allowing 9 yards per scramble, the Bills. So that's a problem because Nix, as they say, Nix can scoot, and you got to figure out how you're going to be able to slow him down, and that's I think the chess match that you have, as Mario says it from #sports, right? Like the game within the game. Like how do McDermott and Babich confuse the rookie quarterback, as you tend to try to do with the rookie quarterback? But how do you do it when the rookie quarterback's perfectly capable of just tucking it and running and running for a first down every time he breaks the pocket?
It's almost like we're going to end up getting a taste of our own medicine from 2018 and 2019 when defensive coordinators were like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to throw this really exotic look at this kid and let's see him throw into this defense. And then the kid went, nah, I'm going to go jump over your middle linebacker. I'll see you in hell. And now you're just standing there looking at your defensive coordinator like, what do we do now?
Right.
What's our pivot? And everyone goes, I don't know. I don't know how to stop that.
Yeah.
Bo Nix brings some of that to the table.
Yeah. He's, I think probably for different reasons, obviously. Bo Nix and Caleb Williams, they've probably had to shoulder the most responsibility on offense just on their shoulders. And Bo Nix has handled it really, really well. Again, we're averaging 25 points per game as a team. Some of that might have to do with the pick sixes we've had, but ultimately, this is the best offense I've watched, honestly, in 10 years. It's even more exciting, obviously, than the 2015 Manning Super Bowl ride.
What about the Tim Tebow offense?
No? So, yeah, the Tim Tebow offense. But this is what gives me hope, guys. I'm not coming in here saying we're going to beat Buffalo. I'm going to be doing all the voodoo dolls and wide left or whatever it is. See if we can get a nice breeze going in Buffalo at the end of the game if it comes down to that. But if Tim Tebow can throw for 300 yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers, surely we can have a chance to go out and beat the Buffalo Bills. That's just kind of how I see it.
It's a Billsy approach, right? I remember we finally broke the drought. The Bills get in and you go, you know what? As long as the better team wins the game, right? Like as long as Bo Nix doesn't come out and lose the football game for you, like there's no reason to not be encouraged by the season that you've had.
And the fun,
even if he does lose the game for us, we're encouraged.
Who cares? It's a learning experience because he's a rookie quarterback. He shouldn't be here. This is all rarefied.
You just don't want it to turn into him seeing ghosts. That's what you don't.
And that's but that's where the offensive line of your team, like it's the one thing that we didn't get to talk about. And I'll tell you this, I'm so impressed with the trenches of your team. Like that's going to be the hurdle for the Buffalo Bills in this one. Like we're going to talk about it here in our keys to victory when we close this after we let you go. But the trenches that you guys have built are impressive. and it's imposing, and it's the backbone of this thing. And it's why you're able to support a rookie quarterback. You know, when Josh started, he was playing behind the second cheapest offensive line in football. All of them combined didn't make Taylor Lewan's salary that year. And so in that way, he was set up for failure, and he did. This quarterback, despite not having a ton of skill position talent, has a really stout offensive line. And if nothing else, you've watched him get more confident, I feel like. Is that just me as an outsider, or do you, as someone who's watched Bo Nix every week, feel like you've watched his confidence grow over the course of the year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's night and day from like the first quarter of the season. A lot of that has to do with the offensive line. Everybody's making $20 million and above on that offensive line outside the center. So it's something that we've really invested in. Everybody's locked up. And it's why Bo Nix, in my opinion, looks more like how people thought Caleb Williams would look like, as opposed to Caleb Williams kind of looking like what people were saying Bo Nix was going to look like coming to Denver. It's been wonderful to see, you know, having a competent head coach, not a perfect one, but a competent one, a good offensive line. And it's why you've seen Bo, again, 4,200 all-purpose yards this year, 34 touchdowns to 12 turnovers. I don't see why I don't think anybody predicted him having that sort of stat line this year. There was one other thing that I was wanting to say about
Well, I'll tell you what,
Buffalo, but I forgot.
Well, as somebody who watched him flop at Auburn, I assumed that's who he was. And I feel like that got into the heads of a lot of draft prognosticators when they go, well, we've seen Bo Nix stink. And then he went to Oregon and he did well. And everyone's like, well, now he's old.
Except when he played Georgia.
He would have gone into the draft if he was good enough. He wouldn't be an old quarterback playing college football. And I think that hurt him.
Old enough for him and Herbert played each other.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those situations where it's like you hurt your draft stock by sticking around too long, but at the same time, maybe it's the thing that saved like your career and made you a viable pro. I like the trajectory. I'm so excited to get to go to the stadium and watch this kid live because I feel like, to your point, he's outplaying the number one pick in the draft. He looks more composed. He looks like he's got the goods. Now, if the team and the coach can put the rest of it around him, you can make a real run behind a kid like this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if Jaden Daniels wasn't playing in a Cliff Kingsbury offense, Bo Nix would be the rookie of the year. And it wouldn't even be close.
And so in that way, I just hope it doesn't start this weekend with a wild card victory over the Buffalo Bills.
You know, this is what I was going to say. Yeah, you know, obviously I'll be rooting for my Broncos to pull off the miracle in Buffalo. But yeah, at the end of the day, we got to bring down the Chiefs. If the Broncos were playing the Chiefs this week, I would feel much more confident. We've played them very competitively for the last 2 years, you know, under Sean Payton. But the one high flying offense that we struggled with this year was Baltimore. That was like the big high flying offense. You guys with the Buffalo Bills are, you guys are very scary offensively. So yeah, we'll come in, try and give our best effort, and hopefully it just doesn't look like that game in Baltimore. But honestly, guys, you know, we're just happy to be here.
It is the 7 seed who sneaks in on the last, gets in on the last week. It is good to be there, and I know that feeling. Yeah. We all in this room collectively know that feeling, and everyone listening to this podcast knows what that feels like, man. I love it. I'm happy you joined us tonight. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find all your coverage, where they can follow you on social media, because I love it.
Thank you. You can follow me on YouTube at David Talks Broncos. If you don't like the sunglasses Sean Payton wears, well, you're going to absolutely hate my college football channel at David Talks Buffs. We're talking about Coach Prime. But you can follow me over there, too, on Twitter, David Talks Buffs, David Talks Sports. I forget what the handle is. But come say hi. I go live quite often. And if you're going to try and rain on my parade this year as a CU fan and a Broncos fan, not happening. We'll let expectations take hold next year. But we're playing with house money right now. I put a parlay on Broncos reaching 10 wins, Buffs winning 6. and now I can buy myself a new mattress, baby. So you're not going to playoff blowout is not going to ruin that for me.
David Neill, David Talks Broncos on YouTube, also has a college channel, David Talks Buffs for the Colorado Buffaloes. Great first time interview with him.
Had a lot of fun. But Chris, we got to get to tonight's keys to victory.
Wow, that's a lot of keys. Bigger the keychain, more powerful the man.
Lacey, you touched on something in here, and it's something that I think is going to play a huge factor in this game. How do you contain the legs of Bo Nix? You know, Chris, you made the comment that, Sean McDermott against rookie quarterbacks. Like, I trust that. You opened the show with a comment about his record against rookie quarterbacks.
That's all I know.
The problem is, what do you do against rookie quarterbacks? You know, there's a lot of defensive coordinators who probably said the same thing about Josh Allen. You know? In this way, it's going to be difficult for the Bills to field the game plan that allows them to, because let's face it, they're not a good downfield passing team. We didn't get to talk about this, but the deep passing numbers for this offense, you know, we talked about the lack of explosive plays very fleetingly, but the Broncos are one of the worst teams in the NFL in generating 20 or more yard plays. They just are. And the numbers, if you go look at PFF in the passing grid and you see where each one of these wide receivers stacks up, I mean, it's really kind of ugly. I mean, like I'll go back up here to some of my notes. At the linebacker level, Marvin Mims, great at the linebacker level, but beyond that, outside of 7 yards or deeper, he has 3 catches on 12 targets. 2 interceptions. It's not good. Sutton, great overall season, good numbers. A lot of missed pass attempts more than 10 yards down the field. He has Bo Nix has a sub 90 quarterback rating when he targets Sutton anywhere down the field at depth. And which probably indicates he's in tighter coverage. Mm-hmm. And Bo Nix is trying not to turn the ball over. So he's putting the ball in places where he thinks only his guy can get it, or at least trying to. But you saw it in that Broncos game. He overthrew how many wide receivers down the field where you're like, if you just connect on that kid. If you just hit that one pass, you could cement us playing you. And he couldn't do it. In that way, you think it's going to be easy to contain the passing, but you also have to be able to shut down the fact that he might just say, fuck it and run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix has over 400 yards rushing. He's got 41 rushes that have gone for a first down. That ranks him 29th in the NFL, third among quarterbacks behind Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen.
And this is my point. Like, there's a dynamic
and Lamar
rusher
Jackson,
here.
sorry, fourth.
And we have seen how sometimes it's Josh Allen's legs that tilt things in our favor when everything gets tight. The question is, what can you do to stifle that? This is almost a thing where you have to play a coach who's trying to coach his quarterback into throwing the ball like Lamar Jackson in the postseason. At the same time, you have this bubble around him like he's Lamar Jackson. You have to keep him in the pocket.
Yeah.
You can't let him out. What other resources does that take away from you being able to stop Marvin Mims?
Well, the issue has been the Buffalo hasn't been able to stop quarterback rushing. They're giving up 9 yards per scramble to quarterbacks. It's 7th in the NFL. So I mean, they're not good when quarterbacks break the pocket. And when you add that to a offensive coach in Sean Payton, who, much like Sean McDermott, right, like knows what a defense is going to do against his quarterback coming into the game, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot more like one read plays for Nix. And it's just one read. If it's not there, just go, right? Like break the pocket and take off and run. Now, for Buffalo, does that mean, do you see more 3 linebacker sets, right? Do they bring in a Dorian Williams? Does he become like a spy on Bo Nix? Is it Matt Milano who becomes the spy on Bo Nix? Do they try to bring maybe some exotic pressures, right? Like we saw a double cornerback blitz from Buffalo in the Lions game. First time we had seen double cornerbacks coming all season long. So those are things that I think it's going to be, you know, again, as Mario from hashtag calls it, it's the game within the game, right? It's that chess match between 2 top tier minds of each side of the football. Sean McDermott, I don't think anyone would argue, is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. Sean Payton, same thing. I don't know how many would argue that it's him, it's Andy Reid, and it's like insert name here after that.
I wanted to shit on him because I don't like him, but then I watched what he did this year, and you have to just begrudgingly give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been, Bo Nix has been a revelation for Denver, and I don't think you could look at it and go, well, yeah, he's throwing to Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims, right? Of course he's good, right? He's throwing to Adam Troutman. Of course he's good. He's got a stout running game, and he doesn't have any of the. He doesn't have any of that.
He's
right?
naked out here, just trying to make it work, and it's working.
Yeah, and it's a worse offense than skill position wise than Russell Wilson had last year.
Yes, and that's the important thing to note. They become harder to defend because of his legs, and he's doing more with less. It's coaching. It's Sean Payton against Sean McDermott. And so that's my second key to victory is you can't get out coached in this one. This cannot be a game where you allow – I think back to the Super Bowl Sean Payton won. He has one ring. And he won it because coming out of halftime, he kicked an onside kick. And it was astounding to everybody who's watching it because you've never seen such a thing. Just randomly like, hey, we're going to kick it off. Everyone, the other team's getting amped like, hey, I'm going to get my shot. And they're so focused on what they're about to do, nobody sees the onside kick coming. And it totally tilts the game. He is a man who is not afraid of risk, except recently. All of a sudden, like the 2-point fiasco against the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a coach who might have, just maybe because of the youth of his team, doesn't really have his fastball right now.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you could look at in that he'll
take risks.
They didn't have to win the Cincinnati game.
No.
Right? They didn't need to win it. They
had to win that Chiefs game.
They knew, yes, but he knew going into that Cincinnati game that the Chiefs had already locked up the 1 seed, right? He knew that he was going to see Kansas City's C team the following week. So how much of it was I'm playing for the tie versus how much of it is I don't need to win this football game and I'm not going to give my potential playoff opponent anything to look for inside of that 2 minutes. I don't want to show them my 2-point conversion plays. I don't want that on tape. But
then they went into that Kansas City game and went 2 for 2 on 4th down conversions because twice they were like, no, we're leaving nothing to chance. We go for it every time. We are going to be hyper aggressive. I expect nothing less from Sean Payton.
House money.
And they're playing with house money. So now the problem is you have to match that.
Yeah.
You have to match the urgency and the intensity. And if you can do that, you'll probably stem the tide of what's going to be a really aggressive football team. The other thing I would say about the Bills offense, we talked about the defense trying to look what they have to stop. I think the outside zone rushing of the Bills can't be understated enough. No. The Broncos have one of the worst DVOAs in football against running backs, specifically against running backs in the passing game. Every running back on our team, I think except for Ty Johnson, has caught a touchdown pass. And that's just because he got tackled at the 1 yard line.
I think he's got one. He's got one, right? Because I think coming into last week, the only pass catcher that hadn't caught a touchdown was Gilliam.
True.
So
Ty Johnson must have caught one.
Yeah.
What I love is that they have this, if you're the Broncos, you have Benito, you have Cooper. Benito is a star.
Yeah.
Like happening in front of us. They have this ferocious pass rush. They have a really stout interior defensive line. And even with Josh Allen's athleticism to kind of bail him out, it's hard to avoid sacks, even with all of that. But you know how you defeat that? You run it at them again and again and again, because for a blitz heavy team, you can make them respect you by simply punishing them every time they try to get a linebacker upfield. Every single time this team thinks about, hey, we're going to walk guys to the line of scrimmage. Good. Run a draw. Check into a draw and hit them with James Cook off tackle. It's going to be chaos if you can do it properly. Our offensive tackles have been playing some of the best football in the NFL.
Yep.
Deion Dawkins is a Pro Bowler, right? You could argue Spencer Brown deserves to be. One of my favorite games was watching him rough up Jared Verse, who's been a stud for LA. Watching him rough him up and just punk him after the plays. I look at this. This is a Broncos team that gave up 43 yards and 2 first downs rushing to Justin Herbert in week 16. Not that long ago.
Yeah.
And it coincides with them playing a softer defense, like David talked about. Their pass rushers were really bad in that game. No run stops, no run statistics, both graded subpar against blocking. Cincy's offensive tackles have been some of the worst in the NFL. And also, Cody Ford. Chris, Cody Ford is a tackle.
Still in the league.
He's still in the league, starting as a tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals. I wonder why it didn't go well. Their offensive tackles were not good this year, but they were still able to generate more than 5 yards a carry when running off tackle against those outside linebackers in week 17. Week 15 against Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor, who's good.
Understatement.
But so is James Cook.
Sure. He's not Jonathan Taylor.
So is Josh Allen.
Yeah, Jonathan Allen first, certainly. Yeah.
They ground out 42 yards, 1 touchdown, and 6.2 yards per carry off right end, off the right tackle's shoulder, and behind tackle. 1 rush stop apiece for their outside linebackers. They're pass rushers. Benito and Cooper are amazing pass rushers. They are really subpar run defenders. Get in their face. Make them pay for their aggressive game plan. Because you know that's what they're going to have. They're going to come out here and try to stop Josh Allen at all costs. Because I think they know that they don't want to put a rookie quarterback in his first playoff start in a shootout. We're like, hey, let's play conservative bend, don't break.
Yeah, because those balls that he threw against Cincinnati, those aren't going to work against the Buffalo Bills secondary.
Half of those end up as interceptions.
That secondary is too opportunistic to be throwing prayer balls, 30 yards up in the air and hoping that one of your guys can come down with it.
And so in that way, I feel like they're going to come into this game with a very aggressive approach. Again, they're playing with house money. So we have to be able to kind of make them pay for the aggression every time you see it. Check into runs, go, but specifically off tackle, outside, get outside the tackle box and let your runners see the field and get blockers out in space in front of them. I swear to God, that's the key to winning the game.
Yeah.
It's not going to be Josh's arm. I've seen the props on Josh Allen's passing and all of these things. I think it's legitimately you need to get about 165 yards on the ground and you coast. If you can manufacture that over the course of this game.
Yeah, I think the key is Buffalo's going to have to weather the early storm, right? They haven't been excellent in the first half. They've been inconsistent, right? If there's one thing you can say about this offense throughout the course of the season is that they've been inconsistent in the first half. If Denver is allowed to come out and play hyper aggressive and the offense for Buffalo struggles and the defense for whatever reason, because they like to wait until that third quarter to kind of figure out what they're doing, halftime adjustments. Okay, now we're going to shut them down. If you go in potentially, down 2 scores into halftime, like you're in trouble mode. Now, if you can turn Denver into a, 3-play, 3 and out, 2.5 to 3 minute drive type of offense in the first half, Josh Allen is good enough to give you a two possession lead at halftime. So it's going to be weathering that early storm, as we've seen historically from these 7 seeds that know they're playing with house money. They come out hyper aggressive. They come out and they try to get a lead. And then from there, it's let's cling to the lead and try to beat the better team. Buffalo can't let that happen. Buffalo's got to get out early, leave this in the dust. Don't give Denver any hope, because the teams that have hope in these 2-7 seed lineups, these 3-6 matchups, like the team that winds up with the most hope, the underdogs, those are the ones that wind up winning.
100%. It's a hell of a thing. It's another wild card game where you want to believe the Buffalo Bills will come out the other side victorious. You want to believe it because you know how good your quarterback is. And at the same time, it is still the NFL. Shit happens.
And it's still the Buffalo Bills.
Guys, I'm hoping that we can get together next week for another foray into a game preview and that we're talking to who we're playing next.
More chains.
If not,
where are the chains, Chris?
I will see you on the other side.
Only for reviews.
Guys, I love you. This season's been a lot of fun. Hopefully it doesn't end here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. That's Ryan Lasel. This has been your Rock Pile Report.